Psycho Schematics.
Psycho Schematics preview for Thursday Night Football, Eagles versus Packers. Packers defense has forced 8 takeaways. They're getting plenty of sacks. They're wreaking havoc and causing pressure. They're doing pretty well against the run, except against the Vikings. And their secondary has vastly improved, especially if they shift to more of a man coverage style with Alexander, King, and with the safeties Amos and Savage in the backfield, allowing them to survey the quarterback's eyes, swoop in, and try to take turnovers. The thing about this Packers defense is the coordinator is not afraid to send blitzes when he needs to. The pressure from the Smiths, Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, has been pretty consistent so far, and it's shown results. And the results are obvious. They're causing turnovers, they're wreaking havoc against offenses, and what they're doing is they're speeding and expediting the pace of how offenses play against them, and how offensive lines have to block against them, especially if Packers defensive coordinator Mike Pettin decides to send blitzes, and he loves to blitz Savage from multiple angles, multiple areas, because Savage, he's a unique safety where he can play as a slot defender too, so he can cover corners and man coverage and slot, as well as playing the safety, so he can blitz Savage from multiple angles and multiple directions. And that's what makes going against the Packers defense so complex, because you have to not only consider the 4 down pressurers, Gary, Preston Smith, Zaire Smith, Kenny Clark, but you also have to consider a blitz. On offense, look for Davante Adams to have plenty of targets and some touchdowns against the secondary of the Eagles. Now, from the Eagles' perspective, injuries have been kicking their ass so far, as Jeffrey and Jax are both in question. Jason Peters is definitely out for this game, and that's going to be problematic for the Eagles moving forward, especially against Green Bay, because like I told you before, Green Bay's secondary has clearly improved since last year and the years past, and their pass rush has clearly improved, especially their exterior pass rush with the Smiths and with Gary starting to improve. So now the situation is Carson Wentz has still overall been playing decent, but he doesn't have as much help as he had earlier in the season, now that Jeffrey, Jackson, and the offensive line lost their starting right tackle, the starting left tackle. So now the situation is you have players that are playing inconsistent for the Eagles in terms of their receiving core and their tight ends, except for Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz has been one of the most consistent tight ends of the past 2 to 3 years. But Goddard hasn't been playing well. Aguilar has been up and down, very Jekyll and Hyde-ish type play, because there are some plays where he plays excellent, and then there are some plays where he flat out drops open catches, and it ends up screwing over the team, as they can't keep any consistency because their offensive weapons aren't playing well, like that example right there. So basically, the situation for the Eagles offense is they lack rhythm and consistency, because their offensive weapons, their main offensive weapons that should be starting, are mainly injured. And the weapons that they have right now, except for Ertz, have been inconsistent at best. So at this point in time, they need to figure out how they're going to keep some level of consistency while moving the ball down the field and giving Carson Wentz some type of help. Or he's just going to have to try and dominate and figure out a way to stay consistent through his own play. Because it's pretty clear that without Jeffrey and without Jackson, the team has showed their offensive flaws. And at least in my opinion, the main problem is without Deshaun Jackson as a deep threat. Typically, when teams lose a major deep threat, what ends up happening is defensive coordinators compress their coverage, start to drop down their safeties, and play more press coverage against the offense. And what ends up happening is the field overall becomes more compressed coverage wise because they lack that deep threat that can attack over the top. So essentially, coverages become more tight, and it makes it a much easier game to call for the defensive coordinator. I got Green Bay winning this game 27-21. Don't be fooled by the struggling Eagles team. This is going to be a much closer game than some of our fans are expecting. I have a feeling that in the intermediate sections of the game, Eagles may play a little bit better than we expect, but in the fourth quarter, we take over. I think Pettin will decide to send a unique type of zone blitz. Savage will get an interception, and that'll lead to a game-winning touchdown for the Pack.